Welcome to the 2021 Girl Up Leadership Summit Tour in Europe. We're so excited to kick off our first ever Global Leadership Summit Tour. We're taking the time to visit 6 regions in 6 days, all ahead of our global tour. We're going to hear from young leaders, activists, and change makers making a difference in their communities. This is day 3. And we're talking about how European women are shaping politics through the lens of intersectional feminism. I hope you enjoy the conversation, and don't forget to join us for the Global Summit on July 13th and 14th, where we're bringing together leaders like you who are working for social good around the world. When girls rise, we all rise.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the first ever Girl Up 2021 Leadership Summit World Tour, shaping European politics through intersectionality. So my name is Ines Gartot, and I identify as a girl, so you can address me using the pronouns she or the pronouns her. The Leadership Summit Tour takes a deep dive into local issues that matter most to our leaders around the globe. And as a teen advisor, alumni, as well as a girl leader from France, I am thrilled to help you bring into Europe's Leadership Summit. You can click the chat icon on the menu bar on the bottom of your screen if you want to chat with the other fellows attendees. Just remember to chat responsibly, and you can also submit any question that you have in a Q&A box throughout the event, and we'll try our best to get as much questions as we can. So today's event will start European politicians, activists, and youth leaders in discussions about intersectionality within European politics. We see women bridging the gap of political participation from Eastern to Western Europe, and all of that to build a stronger future. As the word's intersectionality is in the center of our conversation today, I want to try to define it in a few words. So, intersectionality is a concept that was developed by Kimberly Crenshaw, and some of you might know already about her. And the idea of it is that our identities are made out of an accumulation of factors such as gender, race, sexual orientation, work, that form a system of privileges or of disadvantages. Starting us off today to discuss about it, we have Cynthia Keza-Birukundavie, who's the Senior Diversity and Inclusion Officer at a UN Refugee Agency in Geneva, to talk about the state of politics across Europe.
My name is Cynthia Keza-Birukundavie, and I'm honored to have been invited to speak here today on the European step of the Girl Up Leadership Summit World Tour, surrounded by such inspirational leaders, inclusion and diversity champions who, through their achievements and commitment, continue to motivate many to work together for social change. Waves of change that, though taking place in various dimensions of our lives and societies, are interconnected and prompted by the growing understanding of our commonality, by the knowledge that building a better world for everyone requires the active and intentional inclusion and participation of every single one of us. That's what intersectional feminism is all about. And for that participation to occur, bridges need to be built, doors need to be opened, access ramps installed, glass ceilings shattered, fees waived. Stories need to be told and be listened to. But changing the landscape of our everyday lives to promote that access is not an easy task. Unfortunately, too many policies are still a reflection of uneven power structures. And breaking them down will require perseverance, integrity, humility. It will require all of you, brilliant, driven, and passionate young women, to be brave leaders and to create a space for open and inclusive dialogue, for self-criticism, and for growth. A space where the inevitable tensions between our overlapping identities will need to coexist. A place where we won't compare wounds, but rather learn from and build upon our shared resilience. Because it is through united our narratives the narrative of our lived experiences that we can shake up structures that are no longer or have never been meeting the needs of our collective identity. Brave leadership is also about letting your light shine to challenge the status quo, even when it sometimes feels safer to hide in the crowd. But there's no need to stay hidden. Look around you. You're not alone. You have a network, a large family of diverse individuals who, despite their drastically different stories, have the common desire to build a brighter future for all. Whether it's through introducing a bill that would ensure that all women and girls, regardless of their income status, have access to period products, mobilizing an entire nation to protect women's rights, using social media to inform and sensitize youth to identify and oppose structural racism, or breaking geographical barriers to create dialogue on key social issues. And this community is growing, shaping the future of European politics, bringing forward the determination, self-awareness, empathy, and vulnerability required for constructive and inclusive social change. And you are doing this every day by showing up and letting yourself be seen, by being here today, by organizing within your communities, by spreading awareness. It is your brave leadership that will be what will pave the way to a Europe that resembles us all, because it is through rising to the challenge that we can lift each other up and create societies that leave no one behind. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. This was amazing. And I don't know about you girls, but it gave me even more hope and desire to change the world. And it also reminded me that in our quest for a better Europe, we must amplify marginalized voices to build compassion and to build effective policy. Our next spotlight is also one of my favorites. We will hear from our spectacular Gallup leader. Her name is Jana Arsevska, and she's from the Balkans. And she's going to talk to us about women at the political table.
Hello, everyone. The opportunity to speak at this year's summit as part of the Europe tour is incredible and for sure will be unforgettable for me. A little bit about me. Before I started my Girl Up journey 3 years ago, I was a professional handball player. In the sport, I felt inequality firsthand, but I never found a way before to deal with that, until the amazing Girl Up community helped me raise my voice and fight inequality. On that note, I want to thank Girl Up for the incredible work over the years and for making this summit possible, summit that will for sure change the life of every attendee today. Speaking of amazingness, I want to share a quote from the first African-American woman elected to US Congress, Shirley Chisholm, that says, "Even if they don't give you a seat at a table, bring in a folding chair." What does this mean, and why is it important to have your seat at a table? A recent study finds out that women are more effective leaders than men. But we don't want to compare. We want equal treatment at the political stage. For example, the Macedonian First Lady, Elisabeta Georgievska, is a physician herself and an aspiring activist for gender equality, youth in STEM. She's fighting for the rights of LGBTQ+ community and victims of domestic violence. She was also a guest professor at Columbia University, but she's never at the public eye. Her fashion style, her looks are always commented, but never her deeds. Even Michelle Obama, in her book Becoming, wrote that the height of her heel was more commented than what she said at a certain event. The reason for this is the male dominance that unfortunately we still face. Here are some statistics about the Macedonian Parliament, the country where I live. The current parliament has 116 MPs. only 45 of them are women. This parliament, compared to the first Macedonian parliament after the independence in 1991, that had 120 MPs and only 4 women, is a lot better, but it's not good enough, and it's far from equal. The bad statistics for women in politics in my country does not stop there. From 16 ministries, only 4 are women ministers, and the worst one, from 81 municipalities in Macedonia, only 6 are run by women. That's sad, but that's why you should fight. The world needs you. Female leadership is needed and is incredibly missed. Your voice is valuable and important. Usually when we fight our rights, for our rights, we are called impulsive. Our behavior, our emotions, and our act are called criticism towards men. But when they do that, they are called ambitious. So this should be a wake-up call to raise your voice for your own and the world's good. Don't be part of the chain, be part of the change. And girls, never forget, even if you don't have your so deserved throne, you have your folding chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jana. It was really amazing and so true, because I think as girl leaders, we've all met people and boys who tried to tell us that it was not our place to speak and that we should just close our mouth. And you're right, we need to take that seat. We need to speak over. So just a reminder that we have over 20 girl up clubs across Europe working to fight gender inequality, just like Jana's. And if you check out the new community platform, you can easily find clubs around you with our interactive map. If there's none, you can create your own, and if there's already one, you can join the club in question. I'm from Romans-sur-Isère, which is a small town near Lyon, and that's where I created my first girl up club. You can say in the chat wherever you're tuning from, just so that we have an idea of how global or of where you are coming from in Europe or out of Europe. Okay, so the next panel discussion and Q&A features politicians, activists, and youth leaders all fighting to make Europe a more inclusive and equitable place. This year has been extremely eventful in terms of injustice, and I'm of course speaking of the COVID crisis and the economic crisis that came with it, of the lack of democracy, the rise of racism, which are topics we hear a lot about and we may even talk about today. But this year has also been extremely eventful in terms of protests and claims. And those claims, they have been able to change minds and to change policies. The commitments of the panelists that we have with us today in their countries and more widely in Europe are perfect examples of this. Girl Up's pillars of advocacy, fundraising, service, and education help all youth leaders enact grassroots change in their communities. So now I will hand you guys over to our panel moderator. Her name is Heather Price. She's a girl leader from Manchester, and she's going to make us hear about all these incredible change makers on the intersectional future of feminism in European politics.
Thank you, Inez. Hello, I am Heather Price, Vice President of Girl Up Manchester, and I am delighted to bring together this incredible group of European women to talk about the future of women in European politics. I will ask some prepared questions first, and then we will open up the Q&A section of the panel. Here we will take questions from the audience, and then through the moderated Q&A function. Please keep your questions on topic and appropriate for our session. So why don't we have our fabulous panelists introduce themselves, starting with Marta Lampard of Poland.
Hello. Sorry, I'm a little bit late, but still, I'm so happy to be here. I'm supposed to introduce myself, yes? It's always hard because I start speaking about the movement and the job, of course. My name is Marta Lempart, and I'm the person who called for back in 2016, for the protest, the general national protest against the ban on abortion. And it started from there. Now we are a civic movement that is in 600 cities, and we not only fight for women's rights, for reproductive rights, but for human rights, for democracy, for judiciary independence. And I'm leading the help desk, the national committee that helps people all over Poland to organize themselves and put their own initiatives. We've organized protests and pickets and actions, and we are basically harassed and repressed by our state, as we are considered a major enemy of the government now and the biggest opposition force. So in Poland, the biggest opposition force against the authoritarian government are actually women. Okay, froze.
Hi, I think I'm next. Hi everyone, Monica Lennon. I'm from Scotland and I'm a member of the Scottish Parliament. I've just recently been re-elected for my second term. The first term was quite eventful and I proposed a bill to introduce universal access to period products for anyone who needs them. And I'm delighted that that bill was passed unanimously last year and received royal assent in January this year. And I know that many people around the world want to see similar change in their countries. So I'm delighted to be back in Parliament, hopefully making more progress for women. And I am currently my party spokesperson on net zero energy and transport, and looking forward to COP26 in Glasgow in a few months' time.
Hi everyone, I'm so thankful that I'm here today and able to speak to you all. My name is Neve Grant and I'm currently a college student living in London. A few months ago, maybe about 7 months ago, in the course of the lockdown, I started becoming more exposed to certain issues, especially with the decisions that my government was making in the UK. And to be honest, I got quite irritated at some of these issues and I decided that I would run on TikTok and talk about them. From there, it slowly transformed into learning more myself and I decided to educate others on what I had learned too. Eventually, here I am.
Hi, my name is Rauda Mohammed. I'm a model, so I work a bit in fashion, and I'm also a fashion editor. I also I'm 29 years old, and I'm Somali Norwegian. I came to Norway as a refugee. Growing up, I learned very quickly how the world can be very different in terms of where you are and where you were born. So at a very early age, because I was aware of this, I started to engage in ways that I could be heard. And I felt as a refugee girl, and many times people would speak of me. So now I use my social media platform to speak about the issues that are concerning to ethnic minorities such as me. And I have a degree in behavioral analysis, so I work with mental health and disabilities in that. Yeah, that's what I do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So let's dive in, shall we? So today we are here to talk about the role of intersectional feminism within European politics. Joining us, we have politicians, activists, and youth leaders, each fighting for progress in different parts of Europe in different ways. So, what does intersectional feminism mean to you in regards to European past, present, and future? Shall we start with Rhoda?
Yes, For me, I think intersectional feminism is the connection between all the fights for justice and liberation, you know, because I feel like the inequalities, they intersect with each other. So you can experience racism and sexism at the same time. So I feel like intersectional feminism is the solution to all these unique oppressions that you can face, you know, based on your identity and who you are. So I see it sort of as the framework in which we build inclusive ways to tackle these issues in the society, especially those issues of oppression that overlap. I don't know if maybe Niamh would like to add to that.
So I know that whenever I was in school and the past historic movements that we learnt about feminism, primarily the suffragette movement focused on, you know, getting the vote and women's rights, never quite included women of color or women of different classes or even sexual identity. And especially living in such a diverse age as we do now, you can't separate someone's identity that does overlap. We're unique in different ways, and it's not primarily always on the premise of gender, which kind of emphasizes why that intersectionality is so important. When I go for a job interview, I am a woman, but I'm also someone who looks foreign for whatever reason, and I have a scarf on my head, which is an obvious indication that I'm Muslim, and they can't be separated from each other. When I come to that interview, I come as one person, and that is enough to judge me on.
I think I would agree with what's been said already, and I think it sometimes is uncomfortable, but I think we do have to recognise that, you know, as feminists at times our behaviours have been part of the problem and not the solution, because we can't move forward collectively if some women are still being oppressed. And, you know, I think sometimes, particularly in politics, there's too much focus on, you know, ticking a box, the first female prime minister. When we had the first female prime minister in the UK in 1979, it didn't change the lives of women for the better. But for years, it allowed political parties to say, well, we don't need to have positive action because we've had a woman at the top. So I think it shows that there's always a fight, and the fight is still difficult. But for me, intersectional feminism has to be inclusive. It has to be about empowering all women. And I think the best way we can demonstrate that here in the UK and across Europe is through our actions, through the type of policy that we develop, whether that's at a national parliament level or in local government. And I hope that the Period Products Bill here in Scotland is a good template where we've designed good law and good policy that will work for all women, regardless of their social status, their ethnicity and race, sexual orientation. There was a danger that the bill was going to be means tested, so people would have to prove their income and criteria like that, and that actually was going to reinforce barriers that already exist, barriers that exist for asylum seekers, for refugees, for people from the LGBTQ plus community. So hopefully through our action we've shown what is possible, but you have to absolutely reach out. Often in politics we hear people say there are hard to reach groups, but it's just that the system, you know, has not included people. So we have to change the system. And I think we can do that by absolutely having more women at the top and getting that top-down change, but we have to empower people at a grassroots level.
I think if I can just add on to what you said there, I definitely do think that the power of politics, especially in terms of human rights, are directly linked. You know, we live in a world where the government are the ones who have the power to ultimately grant us certain human rights or restrict them. So if we abstain from politics, if we're not represented in politics, how can our perspectives be heard, essentially?
Okay, thank you. Very interesting points made there. And while we're on the topic of intersectionality, women in politics, especially those from underrepresented communities, often receive an abundance of hate. Marta, as a result of your activism, you've been arrested and you've even received death threats. And Rada, you said that clients have been hesitant to hire you in the fashion industry because they feared backlash from politicians. So what is the impact of bringing underrepresented communities into political conversations and decisions? Let's start with Marta.
I actually don't like the idea of telling that someone is bringing someone into something, because it's mostly people reaching and getting their voice. I think it's with us, with the Polish women's strike, it's about making the space for persons to speak for themselves. And it's not about special programs done by the privileged people to the underprivileged people. And of course, it looks so much better when you're this privileged person and then you open the doors for other people. I don't like that. We don't do that. We just give the space to people to organize themselves, and we are very strong about this. I think the only way to actually let people speak their voice in political discussions is letting people speak their voice, not do the quota thing, not do the guiding thing, not do the leading thing, because it's always that someone owes you something then. So if we are talking about migrant women in Poland, for example, we cannot just say that we are the Polish women's strike and we are the biggest women coalition in Poland. We are the movement, and we also fight for the rights of Ukrainian women living in Poland. We have Ukrainian women speaking for themselves, and we make sure that they are always represented when there is something happening. And I don't see that much. I see people speaking for the people all the time, thinking that they are bringing something into political life and into social life. If it's not the person speaking for themselves from their own personal experience, it's not bringing anything. It's just us feeling better that we brought something in the discussion, that we brought the idea, that we brought the issue, that we've done what we should be doing. Instead of that, we should say, I need 1 minute of my speech to be given to someone else. I don't want to talk about it because it's not about me and it doesn't concern me at all. I know it sounds like complaining, but I think this is different. That's why Polish women's strike is different. That we really, really fight this urge to speak for someone else if we don't have the experience. And we're not the angels saying, okay, so we will make this, we will talk about your issue, we will talk about your clause, and we will make sure that you get there. We can give people the tools, we can spend all the resources that we have for people to get wherever they want to get, but it's the people's choice where they want to get, what they want to do. And this is very hard, because when the expectation is, if we provide someone with the tools and with the resources, we want the outcome. We have this horrible capitalist thinking, even in civic movements, even in NGOs, saying, okay, we're giving this, but we expect that. And we shouldn't expect anything. We should be just giving things that people need, the resources. We should share the resources and let people do the rest. And it's really hard, but this is what we're doing. And I think that that's why we are the massive movement, because people know that we are acting as a help desk, as a movement and as an organization. So whatever they want to do to organize, whatever they want to do to speak for themselves and have their voice, we won't ask any questions and we won't demand anything, and we will not want the outcome. And I would like to see more of that, not the programs for women to be included, but women getting organized and getting in just like that, not being included by someone else who's professionally trained for that. I don't like
Brilliant.
I have to add that I really agree with Martha, what Martha said. It's always, you know, whenever I speak up, I always make sure to tell them that I am capable of speaking for myself. This is my experience. And when I'm telling you, you have to listen. And it's not going to be on your terms. What I say may make you uncomfortable. But just because you feel like you have the power does not mean that you get to dictate how my experiences are and how I'm going to speak, right? So, and it's exactly like what Martha said, is that they give you the space, but they come with these demands, right? So it's like, you can say things that me and you agree on, don't make me uncomfortable, and do not disagree with me, because if you do, then all of a sudden you become the enemy. So I always say, so it is always the best to do not center yourself around my oppression and around my issue, because you have not experienced these things and you have not lived in my own, you know, my experiences. It's the same thing with fashion. So when I come in and I want to do the jobs, everyone already, you know, they have this stereotype of a Muslim woman, which is you are oppressed, right? And I tell them, when I'm telling them the story, is like, no one is really listening to you, because they've already decided you are oppressed, and they like me for my face, but they don't want to hear what I have to say. So I just do this campaign, but please be quiet, right? Nobody wants to hear about your fights and your activism. You know, no one wants to hear the opinions of the model. You're oppressed, but we like your face, okay? So I think that has always been the problem. And when I do meet clients who understand me and who give me the time to speak, they sometimes are fearful of the repercussions that are coming from the politicians. So you would have politicians going on Twitter and disagreeing with a campaign, and how it is promoting oppression of the woman, and how it is against women's rights. Even when I'm saying this is how I want to live, like, no one is listening to me. So it really resonated with me what Martha said.
Brilliant, thank you. Niamh, do you have anything to add to that?
I definitely, I empathize with that, because while we can connect with each other's experiences, we all do have our own unique experiences. And I think sometimes representation in politics needs to be ourselves there in a position of power, in a position where we can make decisions, so we can connect with a larger audience, because as much as people can also empathize, their perspectives are limited to just that, their perspectives, their experiences. And people living in the same country and in the same city can have completely different experiences to one another. And that definitely is the case even now.
Yeah, I would just add to that by saying I totally understand where Martha is coming from, the points that she's made in terms of being a lawmaker and making legislation. You know, you obviously can't do that by opinion, and you can't just have 5 million Scots in the parliamentary chamber, but you have to build into your decision making ways to allow people to occupy the space for themselves and to tell their stories, to share their lived experience, and to tell us, the lawmakers, what they want to see in the policy and the legislation, and what they don't want to see. And that's why in Scotland, women who responded and girls to our survey and consultation were very clear. They wanted it to be on a free, universal basis. They wanted it to be accessible to everyone. And we did a lot of different events in Parliament around that. And recently I led a debate in Parliament on a really difficult topic around forced historic adoption, when women and girls who were unmarried and pregnant in the sort of from the 1940s into the 1970s in the UK, not only in the UK, but that's when most of it happened, and were forced to give up their children for adoption. So there's a group of women who are campaigning for a formal apology from the state, and alongside that, proper support to address their trauma and the impact on their mental health. And I had 7 minutes to make a speech and to open the debate. And how can you put a lifetime of trauma into 7 minutes? And the best thing that I could do was to use most of that speaking time to read the words of the women who didn't have a seat in Parliament and are not allowed in the building anyway because of the pandemic. But that was the most powerful thing that I could do, just use my voice to tell their story in their own words rather than trying to paraphrase it. And hopefully we're on a journey now where this apology and the support it will unlock will happen like it did in Australia in 2013. It's not easy to do. In Scotland, we've had a lot of centralisation, and more funding decisions are happening at the national parliament level. And I think that makes it harder to do what Niamh and Marta and Rhoda have touched on, is about if we want people to shape their own community and make decisions about how funding and budgets are spent, that has to really happen at a very local level. And I think that's something that we need to try and address better in Scotland and across the UK.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was very, very interesting. It should also be noted that the 2019 British general election was widely successful in terms of electing women, with MP Zara Sultana's party electing more women than men, which is a first in British politics. However, as noted in her Vogue article, all 20 of the newly elected Conservative Party female MPs were labelled as Boris's babes. So what are your thoughts on the media and political bodies trying to suppress and patronise the voices of women?
If I may, we have a name for that actually. It was invented by Barbara Labuda, as a solidarity hero, and she once told the story, and it's very popular, that the thing is where the power is, and she called that the separate room. So you might have your boards and meetings and bodies elected and so on, but it depends on where the decisions are being made. So if you have the separate room when just guys meet and they decide about everything, and this is really something that gets into me, and also that what's the woman's role in that? Some women do everything to enter this room. And while they do that, enter the separate room when the decisions are being made, they don't keep the door open for other women. They are just so happy to be where the decisions are being made. And some women just agree to be outside the room, the decision-making room. So it's all in the space that is not official. It's not the official body. It's not a formal thing. But these decision-making rooms are everywhere. They exist everywhere. And I think that's the thing. That's the struggle. And I have to say that because this is something that people should say if they change their behavior or minds or anything. I was a person who would enter the room and I wouldn't care if the doors are shut behind me. So many years ago, when I was working in business, basically, I was just happy to be in the decision-making room. I didn't look back if I maybe should hold the door for some other women to enter. And it took me a lot of time to realize how wrong it was. But I guess there are many women who just have their ambition to get to the decision-making room, but they don't have the urge to realize that it's actually really wrong and the room shouldn't exist. So this is the thing. And I think it's not the media thing. It's not the media describe what is actually happening. They describe the reality of official bodies, official organs, boards and meetings and everything else, and the reality of the decision-making rooms that actually are filled with men still, no matter how many parliamentarians you have.
Thank you. Shall we go to Monica next?
Still on mute. Yeah, it's so depressing that these things still happen, that we see these articles, these sexist tropes, it happens every day, all day long on social media. And it is really depressing because it does put a lot of women and girls off being involved actively in politics, either as an elected official or as an activist. And that is something that is actually really dangerous because it's excluding women and girls when we need them to be really involved. Now, I've been a politician for almost a decade, first at a local level and for the last 5 years in the Scottish Parliament. And, you know, I think with experience and with a bit of a track record, my peers, my colleagues have more respect for me now. But a few months ago, I was running to be the leader of my party, Scottish Labour, and my opponent, or my colleague, but there was two of us in the race, and he is a man and he's a few years younger than me, but I was described as the less experienced candidate, and I thought, you know, this guy's younger than me. So, you know, it just feels like as a woman, you're never quite the right age. You're either too young or you suddenly become too old. And I think part of it is about you know, it's not just about the media, because the media reflects wider society, but we don't have enough women you know, editing papers, leading the newsroom, covering politics. So we need to have more women, you know, actually writing about what is happening. But there's no easy fix to this. I think the best thing something to do is to call it out and to make fun of it and ridicule it. I remember there was a photo on the front page of a tabloid newspaper here in the UK, and it was Theresa May when she was the UK Prime Minister and Nicola Sturgeon as Scotland's First Minister, and the commentary in the media was about their legs. You know, it was about their legs, it was about their shoes, and again, you know, it really undermined both women. And, you know, regardless of a woman's political belief, we have to come together as one to call that out and say it's not acceptable.
Brilliant. Niamh, would you like to add to that?
I think in some ways it almost feels like a way to ensure that women feel uncomfortable in politics. You know, branding them as Boris's babes creates an uncomfortable environment. And I think that from male-dominated media perspective, and even from a male-dominated political perspective, it's a way to keep women out of key decisions and out of key conversations. When the truth is that throughout history, in those uncomfortable environments, women have been able to thrive, and we've been able to find ambition in fighting against it. You know, the easiest way to disregard someone's argument is to patronize them, but it doesn't take away the fact that there is an argument there is a cause there, and there are facts there, and it makes the fight that we're all fighting all the more important.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And to Niamh again, oh no, sorry. So what unique roles do activists and social discourse play in politics, representation, and pushing the conversation? Shall we start with Radha?
Yes, I thank most of my activism to especially social media, because I have felt for a very long time that my voice was never heard, and that I have been disinvited and disincluded from all the conversations that were happening both in the media and in politics. But now that I have my own platforms, I feel like I can speak my truth without being afraid of it being edited out or not being included. That has given me, first of all, the platform to meet other like-minded people, because it can be very lonely feeling to sit there and always never being able to speak up and not having your stories being heard. You just feel so disinvited. So that has really helped me connect with other like-minded people. And also, I don't need to beg people to listen to me, whether that is politicians or that is, you know, the media or editors. I can pick up my phone and write exactly how I feel about an issue that concerns me, and it will create the conversation that I so desperately want to have. And that has also given me the opportunity to take ownership in my own story and in what represents who I am and my background.
Okay. can I say also something? Because I think our movement is the best example of what happens if the activism stays anti-establishment. I think this is the source of our success, because on one side we have politicians and media and the people who are basically convinced that they can tell us what the reality looks like and how it should look like. And on the other hand, we have people who are just fighting for whatever is theirs. We are at 75% support. So Polish Women's Strike has more supported twice as much as the government plus 10, and much more than any political party, the opposition parties in Poland. But it's because we are anti-establishment and we really care about speaking our own voice and giving the voice to people who need that. And if we stop doing that, if we became this establishment organization that has ties with politics and with whatever the image is created about how life looks like from the capital city level, we wouldn't have that kind of support and people wouldn't be so connected. So we did basically things that none of the parties was capable of doing. We brought the government down 15%. We managed to stop the parliament works for 2 months. We, thanks to our protests, European Parliament decided that abortion is a human right, actually. And we forced the biggest opposition party in Poland, which is a conservative party, to actually declare that they are for legal abortion, which they would never said before. And it means that they are more scared of us than they are of the bishops. So we are scarier, we are more scary than the church, the Catholic Church of Poland, which is a horrible organization and corrupted and has a lot of money and a lot of influence. So now they fear us more than they fear the church. So this is the change, but the change is because we were and are and will always be anti-establishment, and we will always be with the people and for the people. And I know it sounds like this populist thing, but this is very important. 28% of the government voters, this neo-fascist crazy government that hates us, 28% of the government voters are actually supporting Polish Women's Strike also, because they have this very strong anti-establishment sentiment that we have, and this is the connection that we have, that they might not like what we are saying, but they know that we are telling the truth at least. That's the thing.
Thank you very much. And to Niamh, how do you feel your place as a youth activist, like so many of our Girl Up leaders, influences this?
I mean, as someone who comes from the youngest current generation, I think, and especially in an era where we're so connected by social media, we're hit with certain realities that other people may not face or may not face till later on in life. You know, I'm 17 and I'm putting in college applications, and I'm noticing that our schools are advising us to list what sort of disadvantages we have, list if we come from a household on benefits, or our ethnicities or our religious beliefs to fit an ethnic minority quota for colleges. And being hit with that reality is obviously incentive for some people to take action. And the way I see it is that action comes in 3 steps. It comes from education, then acknowledgement, and then change. When you have a government that in some cases are not educated, but also fail to acknowledge individuals, that change can't be brought about. And we have cases where in France or in Switzerland, Muslim women are branded symbols of oppression, despite the hundreds of protests that Muslim women will put out and the thousands of Muslim women that will speak out against the laws that they're putting in place, where they are constantly disregarded. But that education still needs to take place. It's more incentive for that education to take place, and especially in the younger generations, when we have so much opportunity to learn and we're so connected with each other, and like we are essentially today, and we can really bring about that change.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We're now going to start taking questions from the audience. So if you could put your questions in the Q&A function with your name and where you are from, to ask these incredible women their experiences and hopes for intersectional feminism in European politics? Thank you. Okay. So, an EU-wide survey conducted by the European Union Fundamental Rights Agency found that 50% of the women surveyed had been sexually harassed and 1 in 3 had experienced physical and/or sexual violence. Do political spaces institutionally enable sexual assault and harassment? And if so, how would a more diverse government prevent this? Shall we start with Marta, perhaps?
I think it's still the power thing. I kind of gave up on asking and educating. So if there are more of us than them, then this is a space that is safe for us. That's that. Because if women appear in spaces that were traditionally men's spaces, everything that happens is about the message, you don't belong here. And if we are there and there's more women than men, if we are there and we know that we should be there, that we belong there, the message is you don't belong there. You have the 2,000 years of debt to pay, so shut up now. And I know it's not very popular, and I know we should all try to find a way that we can work together and find this way to solve this equation. But at the end of the day, I really believe in taking over the formerly men's spaces as a tool to make it safe for women. That's that. So I believe in scaring them off more than convincing them that they shouldn't be doing what they have been doing for the last 2,000 years and never going to change that. Because I don't see men changing, and I don't see the men's culture changing that. I see the effect of them being not powerful enough to attack us. That's the only thing I see working. I'm sorry to say that, but I see that with our government. I see that within the organizations. I see that in many spaces. And I see that when we work with other organizations. There are many organizations that work with Polish Women's Strike, taxi drivers, trade unions, and so on. And they chose us to cooperate with us because we are so strong and we are so powerful that they have no choice. They have to respect us. But they wouldn't make this decision if we weren't so strong and if we weren't so big and if we weren't the major hope. So I know it's not optimistic and it's not this, nice world when everybody wants the best. No, men don't want to give the space back to us. They don't.
Okay, thank you. And now we have a question from Avatara Ayusu in the UK. And they ask, what is one action we can do to promote equality? If we can get one thing from each speaker, that would be fantastic. Why don't we start with Monica?
Such a good question. It's hard to give one answer, but I think we have to be serious about anti-poverty action We have to eradicate poverty in order to build true equality. So we need to have a social security system that is a proper safety net and to keep people out of in-work poverty. So we need to make sure that people get a real living wage as a minimum.
Brilliant. Let's go to Neve next.
I definitely think that just having conversations is so important, because you never know someone's perspective on key issues until you have certain conversations with them. And I've had conversations with people and tried to get them to understand an alternate perspective. And it tells you a lot about people when they refuse to understand a certain perspective, or they brand it, you know, they brand it feminism and give it a very, very negative connotation, when the truth is for hundreds and thousands of women, it has a very, very positive meaning. And having those conversations is the easiest way to start to educate others, the easiest way to normalize it, to make sure that we are not excluded from these conversations ourselves.
Brilliant, thank you. And now let's pass it to Rhoda.
Yeah, I agree with both what Monica and Liam have said. I'd also like to add that it needs to be less hostile environments where, you know, everyone is comfortable enough, where everyone is comfortable enough to speak their truth. So as to, you know, if you do get the chance to be in the power room where decisions are being made, that you also, the environment is not so hostile that you just keep quiet afraid of what's going to happen if you speak the truth, or you're going to be excluded again. So I think we need to work on how we sort of like get together collectively and to ensure that everyone can speak their truth and not keep silencing people once we actually sit at the table to have these discussions that Liam was talking about.
Brilliant. Thank you so, so much. I cannot thank each and every one of you enough for joining this brilliant panel. It was such an honour for our Girl Up leaders in Europe and across the world to hear from you on the state of gender equality in European politics. I'm now going to pass you back over to our wonderful host, Inez.
Thank you so much, Heather, and thanks to all the panelists for such this inspiring discussion. It's incredible to me how all your commitments are really different in really different places, and yet how they all meet around this idea of women being in control of their own body and minds, and being able to be heard, no matter the way they look, no matter their choices. And this is so important, so thank you. Now, once again, we turn to our Girl Up changemakers to share their work and experiences as young leaders fighting for a feminist future. So please help me welcome Evan Bello. Evan Bello is a Girl Up leader from the UK, and she's going to talk to us about the myth of fragmented identity.
Hi everyone, my name is Evan Bello. I'm from London, and I'm going to talk about how everyone can start including intersectionality in their politics and why we can't let that idea become distorted or ignored. I'm really excited to be part of this vital discussion, and I'm honoured to be included with these amazing speakers in my first Girl Up Leadership Summit. Like Neve, I'm currently doing my A-levels. I'm studying history, English literature, and religious studies. And through these, I've learned more about intersectionality's lasting effects on both cultural stereotypes and policymaking. I'd love to read and watch films, and in my spare time, I've just started learning the ukulele. My talk is entitled The Myth of Fragmented Identity, because intersectionality seeks to combat the idea that all the parts of our identity, whether that's race, gender, class, or sexuality, are separate and have separate effects. We all have complex and varying identities, and we need to recognize the way that these have different effects and mean that we have unique struggles requiring different solutions. In the last year especially, I've been engaging in the conversation about how identity affects politics in a cultural and academic way, with my own lived experience influencing my lens of vision. Looking at gender and race, particularly Afro-Caribbean people, and how those two things intersect in people's minds, I use the example here of perhaps a conversation with a colleague in which you're firm and direct, maybe raising your voice. The white man is most likely to be seen as assertive, while the white woman may be hysterical, the Black man might be seen as threatening, and the Black woman may be seen as aggressive. I know that I've been pulled up by people for seeming aggressive or too much in situations where I'm just asserting myself. And yet my experience would be totally different to any one of the other people in this table and people affected by loads of different things. When choosing who to trust, we all rely on former experiences and information. However, this can easily become prejudice, and when it comes to choosing politicians, people's opinions can often be influenced by this subconscious stereotyping. Taking the example here, women and African-American candidates, but this applies to candidates from other marginalized groups as well, are often stereotyped as being more ideologically liberal than their white male counterparts. This could mean that people from marginalized backgrounds in politics feel pressure to tone down their policy to fit the status quo and to be seen as more accepted. Politics only works when people can bring their authentic identities to the table, though. And so this kind of discrimination stifles political discussion. However, this is not the only kind of discriminatory stereotype. And research done by Lean In shows that Black women suffer from especially having their competency questioned more than other women from other racial groups. This is important because first and foremost, people vote for politicians. First and foremost, people tend to vote for politicians they think will get the job done. And so if Black women are disadvantaged by being seen as less competent from the off, that will affect their chances. As Tim Hartford writes in The Undercover Economist, a policy is only as good as the assumptions behind it. This is why maintaining a framework of intersectionality is so important, as if we assume that an issue affects everyone in the same way, then our solution may not be the most effective and may alienate some people. An example of this is the public-private dichotomy, which is based on the association of masculinity and the public life, and femininity and the private. So that's like the home. However, this ignores the fact that working class women especially are often forced into the public sphere, and so are more affected by a lack of free time at home because of the extra care work they have to put in when they get there. Critics of intersectionality see it as a new caste system that puts heterosexual white men at the top. However, the quote on the screen from its originator, Kimberly Crenshaw, shows that this isn't the case at all. Intersectionality as an idea isn't a threat. Rather, it's a framework that we can use to make sure that our problem solving takes into account all aspects of life to try and reach full equity. Just as a closing, these are some things that we can do in our daily lives to try and include intersectionality, making sure our feminism includes people from all different backgrounds, and voting for and collaborating with a range of diverse candidates. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evan, for detailing the importance of intersectionality the way you did. This was really interesting. That, my friend, brings close to the Girl Up 2021 Leadership Summit World Tour, Shaping European Politics Through Intersectionality. I really want to say how important I think it is to connect all the hardworking feminists of Europe, and also to highlight the groundbreaking work from Eastern to Western Europe, as well as to cultivate that bond that we are creating right now. I invite you all to just take a moment and think about how you can call in people of different identities and background to your work. The image Mrs. Kimberly Crenshaw uses to describe intersectionality is different circles that meet at some point. And I think that all thinkings and all commitments must also be decompartmentalized. I hope these wonderful change makers have inspired you to bring change back to your community, because I sure was. And I also want to remember you that you can visit the Gallup website to join the community. You'll be instantly connected to passionate youth nearby and across the world fighting for an intersectional feminist future. We are so excited to continue this Gallup Leadership Summit tour with a stop tomorrow in Sub-Saharan Africa. So be sure you join us for that event, where they'll be discussing menstrual hygiene as well as sexual and reproductive health in Africa. You can find the link to register in the resources box on your screen. See you there. And our week-long summit tour will end on Monday, July the 12th, but the work doesn't stop, and we want you to join us for the opening of our global summit on Tuesday, July the 30th. We have an exciting lineup of global change makers, along with workshops, networking, and opportunities for our global Gallup community's members to continue connecting and discussing the issues that matter to you. If you haven't already, you have to make sure you reserve your spot for the summit as well as register. You can find a link to do that in the resources box. And lastly, for those Gallup Club members and youth looking to start a club and get involved in European Gallup community, you can join our regional WhatsApp group. We would love to stay in touch during the tour and the summit, so check out the link to join the resources box. That was a bit long, but also important to explain how you can get committed in Gallup. And yeah, just to close this event was also a reminder to demand and create space for us to share and express our voices. And Gallup clubs are one way to do that, but the panelists, for example, showed that there are many other ways to do that. Because as girls, as racialized people, as LGBT+ people, or under any other kind of discrimination, we need to take that space. It won't be given to us. So we'll see you tomorrow in Sub-Saharan Africa. And I want to thank you all for being there and listening to all these wonderful people, and wish you a very nice night. Bye-bye.